In the year 2000, the Jubilee, when, as you would say in Ireland, there was not a sinner in sight, we closed, to all intents and purposes, the functioning of the monastery except for the lay guardian who kept the church open. And we went on pilgrimage to gain our Jubilee indulgence as far as possible on foot in Rome. And so we walked, and when we would get to a strategic point, we would go into chant mode, and whoever was there, we would sing the office as we would at home, in Latin and in Gregorian. And on the way, we discovered things that we weren't aware of. We had, for instance, a friend of the community who had just been made abbot of Trefontane, a Frenchman who was only a monk and was not even a deacon, and by dispensation was made deacon, priest, and abbot one after the other, because he'd been elected by his own community. Now, Trefontane, as you know, is linked with this feast. 3 fountains. But before I get there, I will explain 1 or 2 things that he told us. C'était ici un lieu de violence. It was here a place of violence. On this spot, at the time, gladiators were being trained. And you know, of course, that gladiators had a short innings. Classically, they would be in the theatre in front of the emperor whom they were diverting and amusing, and they would, before the gladiatorial fight, salute him with these words: Morituri te salutant. Those who are about to die salute thee. And then may the best man win. And so that is the spot. It explains how it's not difficult to imagine that a Roman citizen, being spared other forms of death, was with a certain dignity just once only sent off into the beyond, but at that point where people were well used to chopping each other up. He also explained that if you, as you will do, go on foot, you will find that it is quite close to where his head is. So it's quite plausible that that's where it was taken. And we know that in the year of St. Paul, it was proven that was the case. As during the war, actually, they excavated under Pius XII, under the Confessione of St. Peter there in the Vatican, they found indeed it was St. Peter. So too, it is indeed, we know it now definitely, the head of St. Paul under the high water of St. Paul's outside the walls. We moved on foot, and at a certain point on the Ostian way, Via Ostiense, which goes down to the port of Rome, Ostia, which means doors, we paused and we reached this spot which I wasn't aware of. This is the point where Peter and Paul said goodbye. They went their separate ways, having reached Rome, and they knew full well what was ahead. And when a student, I was led by a friend who knew more than I did to the spot where St. Peter said, I am not worthy to die like my master. Crucify me this way round. So with all the blood running to his head, and we know the spot now, that's where he was. And also we could go underneath to the prison where he was kept before that rather uncomfortable way of breathing his last. Some night of anticipation, I would say. This week, I was in a place of prayer a long way from here, but one thing hit me. Wherever one goes on this globe, one can celebrate with one's brethren the same right that they handed on to us, and in fact with the same words. He took this most precious chalice. They were holding the very chalice in their hands, the apostles, and they were using the words of the old Roman canon nearly as we have it, it would seem, because we have these references to what they alone would use: Melchizedek, Abraham, Abel, and so on. They're from the apostles, these sacred words, as are the gestures which there in a distant land, I was repeating, looking up to heaven. So time does not exist at this moment where we're doing what they handed on at such great a price. Paul, he was chopped off, as we know there, head separated from the body. They say that initially the soul is for a few seconds in the head alone, and then it goes off. But the head, it fell and bounced there and there and there, where those three fountains, which gave the name to that place, gushed forth, and where our brethren, the Trappists, are now, founded actually from La Trappe. I make a jump. Opposite that monastery, and opposite the place where it happened, something else has happened in recent times. Would you like a story? Then I shall begin. Bruno was born on the 9th of May 1913. He was, therefore, 33, that's curious, on the 12th of April 1947. He came from a poor background and had received only rudimentary religious instruction. After military service, at the age of 23, he married Yolanda, and to earn money decided to fight on the nationalist side in the Spanish Civil War, although he was actually more inclined towards communism. Once in Spain, now this is the initial problem, he came under the influence of a German Protestant who managed to convince him that the papacy was the cause of all the world's ills. Bruno at once conceived a hatred for the church and vowed, wait for it, that he would kill the Pope. Nor was this an idle threat. He bought a dagger in Spain, especially for this purpose, carving on it the words, "Death to the Pope." His wife was not enthusiastic about his new Protestant beliefs, and he began physically to abuse her. He also destroyed all the Catholic mementos and pictures around the house. He then decided to join the Protestant Adventist Church in Rome and tried to persuade his wife. She agreed on one condition, that first she would make the 9 First Fridays devotion, and that if at the end of this he was still determined to become Protestant, she would join him. Anyway, she reluctantly followed suit eventually. From 1939 to 1947, he worked as a tram conductor, and by that date he had 3 children. Unfortunately, his physical abuse of his wife continued, while by now he was a convinced communist who still had plans to kill the Pope. On the Saturday after Easter, the 12th of April 1947, he set off for the afternoon with his children. On the following day, Sunday, he was due to give an anti-Catholic and indeed anti-Marian talk, and he wanted a chance to plan out what he would say. Note that this Sunday is the date of the proposed Feast of Divine Mercy, and thus the apparition to Bruno happened on its eve. They took the bus to Trefontane, where the shop at the Trappist monastery was famed for its chocolate. Once there, while waiting for the shop to open at about 4 o'clock after the siesta, he sat down in the shade to plan his talk, while the children played with a ball on some waste ground nearby. At about 3:20, he was disturbed by the children shouting for their lost ball. But as he helped with the search, the youngest promptly went missing himself. Bruno discovered him in a small cave or grotto, smiling with hands joined as he knelt and repeated the words, "Bella donna, bella donna," beautiful lady, beautiful lady. Bruno could not make anything out, and so called first for Isola, one of the children, and then to Carlo, who both came and saw the bella donna. All three children were entranced and oblivious of his shouts. He became frightened after he was unable to lift them and called out angrily into the empty cave. Finally, in desperation, he cried out, "God, help us!" At this, Bruno saw two transparent hands which touched his face and wiped his eyes, causing him pain. Then he saw a tiny light in the cave which grew more luminous as he felt an interior sensation of great joy. Finally, he saw a beautiful woman with a motherly but sad expression, wearing a green mantle over a white dress and with a rose-coloured sash around her waist. In her hands, she held an ash-grey book close to her breast, while at her feet he could see a crucifix which had been smashed on top of a black cloth. She called herself the Virgin of the Revelation, and spoke to Bruno slowly and rhythmically for about an hour and 20 minutes. He could remember every word afterwards. It was like a recording he could replay time and time again. But the children only saw her lips move and heard nothing. Our Lady revealed herself thus: "I am she who is related to the Divine Trinity. I am the Virgin of Revelation. You have persecuted me. Now is the time to stop. Come and be part of the holy fold, which is the celestial court on earth. God's promise is unchangeable and will remain so. The 9 First Fridays in honor of the Sacred Heart, which your faithful wife persuaded you to observe before you walked down the road of lies, has saved you. Live the divine doctrine. Practice Christianity. Live the faith. The Hail Marys that you pray with faith and love are like golden arrows that go straight to the heart of Jesus. Pray much and recite the Rosary for the conversion of sinners, of unbelievers, and of all Christians. I promise this special favor. With this sinful soil, the soil of the grotto, I shall perform great miracles for the conversion of unbelievers and of sinners." The local church authorities carried out an investigation, and the cult of the Virgin Revelation was approved with unusual speed by the Vicariate of Rome. pilgrims grew, the area around the grotto had to be altered to make it safer and more accessible. A special statue was blessed by Pope Pius XII on the 5th of October 1947 and taken in procession amidst a huge crowd from St. Peter's Square to Tre Fontane. Just 2 years later, on the 9th of December 1949, Bruno was part of a group invited to pray the Rosary with Pius XII in his private chapel as part of the beginning of the 1950 Holy Year celebrations. After it, the Pope asked if anyone wanted to speak to him. Bruno came forward, knelt at his feet, and with tears in his eyes, showed him the dagger with which he had intended to kill him, and his Protestant Bible. He begged forgiveness, which Pius XII unhesitatingly gave. This is a unique occasion and in recent history in which our Blessed Lady has literally, clearly said, with authority and visible proof that it was authentic, the one true church is the one founded on Peter.